The night is dark and full of terrors.
What if Jon Snow came back wrong? Let's explore the depths of it in the video. Snow drifts through the shattered gate, hissing against the stones. Torches flicker in the draft, their light bending across the hall where a body lies upon a table. The room smells of cold blood, steel, and smoke. Outside, the mutineers wait, blades drawn and bows notched. They are anxious to storm the castle, but Bowen holds them back. He promises the loyalists a day, and he will honor that promise. Enough blood has been spilled here tonight. But the loyalists make no move to surrender. Instead, they watch as the Red Woman works. Melisandre kneels beside him, her red robes pooling across the floor like spilled wine. Her hands are unsteady as she cleans the dried blood from his chest. She does not look at the others. She lays her hands upon Jon's chest. The air tightens. Even the torches seem to bow toward her.
Lord of Light, cast your fire upon this cold flesh. Bring him forth.
Nothing. The silence stretches. Davos Seaworth shifts uneasily. Someone coughs. Melisandre's eyes close.
Please, show me I was not wrong. That this wasn't all for nothing.
Her hand presses harder against his skin. The room falls away. Darkness folds around Jon, endless and weightless. He floats within it until a flicker of light burns in the distance, a single ember growing, twisting into a river of flame. A voice rises from the fire, ancient and vast. Neither man nor woman. Rise, wolf of the north. Rise, my sword against the night. The flames surge, showing him visions that sear his mind. An army of corpses marching beneath the pale aurora. The Night King's blue eyes glimmer through the snow. The wall is crackling like glass, a red comet cutting across a bleeding sky. And then he watches as the White Walkers storm Winterfell. He hears the screams of those inside as they are consumed. He watches as the dead rise from their crypts. He watches the fallen Starks begin to rise up. But as Jon looks at them, he recalls the memories of his time there. He recalls the cold stares upon him from Lady Catelyn and those of the other people in the house, as if he were the reason Ned Stark's honor was slighted. He thinks of all the feasts they had there, where Jon was relegated to the back seats with the lesser lords, squires, and free riders, or the mocking smile of Theon Greyjoy and the hard looks from the Northmen. Not all of them were bad. He thinks of Robb's easy smile as the two of them would spar or go riding. He thinks of Ned's silent words of reassurance, praising Jon for his dignity, and of Arya, who seemed to be the only person who understood him. Each image burns away until only ash remains. Lord Stark was dead, as were his brother and sister, and with that, all the warmth and joy within him dies with them, leaving only the biting chill of the north. Flames pour into his lungs. He tries to scream, but breath is fire, and pain is the only thing that feels real. Melisandre opens her eyes. Sweat beads along her brow.
I saw something.
No one replies. Then, a sound. A rasping inhale. Jon gasps. His eyes snap open. His body jerks as if surfacing from black water.
Gods.
The Lord has answered.
Jon sits upright, his breath clouding the air. He looks around the room. Faces familiar, but distant, blurred as through ice.
Where am I? You're at Castle Black. You were dead.
Jon presses his palm to his chest. The knife wounds are still there, raised, cold. The memory floods back. The circle of his killers, the pain, the betrayal. Jon stares into the nearest flame, its reflection dancing in his eyes. Not warmth, only fire and shadow.
The Lord of Light brought you back.
Then he's crueler than the world I left behind. No one else is coming back. Not Robb, not my father, not Arya. Just me.
You have returned because he still has need of you. The world still needs you, Lord Snow. You are the last of your father's sons. You have a role to play in this war and in preventing the long night.
Then I'll make this world remember why it should fear the dark. Starting with the men outside.
But even as he stands up, the other loyalists look at him questioningly. They are glad to have him back and are eager to deal with the mutineers, and yet, what can they actually do? Bowen Marsh has them ready to fight the moment they step out, and none of them are keen on losing John so quickly. Davos is about to suggest a strategy or think of a new plan, but before he can say anything, they hear a loud crash outside. The men whirl, and John reaches for Longclaw. For a moment, they think it might be them deciding to forego their agreement and simply storm the Great Hall. Instead, they see that it is coming from beyond the halls and from Castle Black's courtyard. Hundreds of wildlings stream inside, commanded by Tormund and One. They rush the unprepared Night's Watch mutineers, who were expecting an attack from inside, not out. In a matter of minutes, they are completely overwhelmed, with their men cut down or captured. Bowen is on the dirt, looking up at the free folk angrily as they are commanded by Sir Axel Florent, who looks at them contemptuously from his warehouse. Though he has little love for Jon Snow, he will not risk Melisandre's safety. He also understands that Jon was an ally of Stannis. That means he cannot lose him, especially to men who are hostile to the king. He is about to order the prisoners slaughtered when the door opens and the loyalists begin to step out. To his relief, Melisandre is among them, but the next person who follows her takes his breath from his lips. All around him, the Black brothers are less able to contain their surprise as Jon steps forward. The sight of him stuns the rest of the order. Even Bowen cannot believe his eyes. He shakes his head in disbelief and mutters that this should not be possible. Yet it is, and when Jon steps towards him, those words fall silent.
Take a good long look, Oathbreakers. That is the last face you will all see. Kill them. No, I gave no such command. Leave them in the ice cells until they rot or the wall collapses over them, whichever happens first. But these are my prisoners. No, these are my men.
The Lord Commander speaks truly. These are not the Queen's men, but men charged with protecting the wall. Their fate is not for you to decide, sir.
Consider this my last command as your Lord Commander. Pray that the next one decides to be merciful.
These words bring about confused gasps from the Queen's men and the Black brothers alike. Some point out that the Lord Commander serves for life, but Jon pins them down with a look, reminding them that he did serve until his death, and that the mutineers saw to that. No one dares argue against that. Instead, they fall silent and allow him to march off to the Lord's Tower to plan their next move. Questions abound about what shall happen next. If there is no Lord Commander, they wonder what his role is now, and why they should listen to him. And yet Melisandre seems to follow him, and that gives him some authority. His first course of action is to order the remaining Queen's men back, so they may discuss what will happen next. Jon recalls the letter Ramsay sent him, saying how he managed to defeat Stannis' army. Whether that is true or not, one thing is clear. They cannot leave Ramsay unopposed for now, and so they must take action. Jon decides to follow through with his original plan of recruiting volunteers and wildlings to join his army to march south. While some are opposed, pointing out how depleted their numbers are, Jon promises to send more soldiers once he's reclaimed Winterfell. Even if he doesn't take the lordship, he will defeat the Boltons and send their soldiers up to the wall. For the Night's Watch, it will grant them some much-needed men, and many wildlings are eager for the prospect of loot and claim some of the wealth for themselves. Hundreds volunteer, and they soon gather an army of over 2,000 from both the Free Folk and the Night's Watchmen. The new Lord Commander is Dennis Mallister, who is quick to fall into line once he hears about Jon's strategy. While he can't say he approves, he is happy to be rid of the wildlings, as Jon promises to find them land south to settle, and he recognizes an influx of new men as just what their order needs. So he gives his permission and promises to do what he can about getting the wildlings south of the wall. They begin their march south, not following the route Stannis took. Instead, Jon moves towards Carhold, knowing that, at the very least, their lady will be friendly towards them. If not, this can at least provide an easy conquest. He reaches out to Alice Karstark, who manages to retake Carhold with the Thenns. This allows them to take control over Karstark domains. Jon suggests allowing more wildling settlers to repopulate the depopulated areas. They can start with the Thenns, and add more as time goes on, provided they swear loyalty to Alice and Sigorn. The plan is controversial because of how much the North distrusts them, but the numbers Jon initially proposes are low enough that people will not seriously object. Alice is wary, but knows she can use all the swords she can get and allows any warrior family to settle there if they promise to fight for her. That is just the first part of Jon's plan. The other is to turn east towards the Dreadfort, with Roose taking most of House Bolton's military strength down to confront Stannis. He only has a few hundred men left to watch his own castle. Jon takes immediate advantage of this and begins to attack it. He does not strike at the castle directly, knowing he lacks the numbers and the discipline to maintain a siege. Instead, he focuses on striking the surrounding areas and playing the wildlings' strength. They are poor warriors in the head-to-head clash, but they excel in raiding, so John unleashes them upon the villages. Food stores are ransacked, farms are burned, and the wildlings pillage settlements for supplies. Skilled laborers are carried off to serve the army, especially smiths. This is a bold move, and many men mutter at the harshness. Ned Stark would never do anything like this, but John looks the other way. After seeing what he's seen, this is an acceptable price for him. He finds himself thinking of all the cruelties inflicted upon him by House Bolton to the north and to his brother. He wonders how many had died when they sacked Winterfell. That is enough to convince him. Roose cannot do anything due to being bogged down in Winterfell, leaving the few hundred soldiers there to handle it. While they initially simply stay in the Dreadfort, John decides to lure them out by attacking their villages, and this does the trick. Soon enough, a relief force is sent out to try and save them, but these 100 men fall into ambush and are wiped out. Soon, the small folk they took prisoner are paraded in front of the Dreadfort for all to see. The garrison might serve Roose Bolton, but they lack his coldness. They see their family and kin under threat, and when calls to surrender are made, they open their gates. John allows the garrison to depart after they surrender their weapons and armor, which are used to arm the free folk. The only exception to that is the castellan that Roose left behind. Rather than letting him go, John has him tied up outside the castle and has him burned alive as an offering to the Lord of Light. There, Jon Snow peers into the flames. Deaf to the man's screams, as through the crackling of wood and smoke, he hears something. The Lord of Light whispers to him, promising him greatness, and saying that the fires can only be fed by him. The smoke seems to reach out and curl towards him like beckoning fingers. After some hesitation, he turns his attention away and looks back towards the north to consider his next move. Rather than install a new house to take their place, John begins settling wildlings there and offers them land. The small folk are told they will learn to get along with the free folk or face the pyre as well. The loss of the Dreadfort is a serious blow for the Boltons. As though they might hold Winterfell, it is a sign of weakness during a time they cannot afford it. Many northern houses begin to question why they continue to take orders from them and accept them as overlords. Many know, or at least strongly suspect, that Roose has some involvement in the Red Wedding, and now they defy him more openly. To make matters worse, John soon gets word that Stannis didn't perish after all and continues to fight the Boltons. He's already managed to defeat their advance guard outside the Crofters village, smashing the Frey contingents and getting the Manderleys and Umbers to defect. However, Roose is smart enough not to commit his entire force into battle as he holds most of his troops behind the walls of Winterfell. Every day he strengthens the defenses as the winter becomes colder and hampers Stannis' more. Without any support, the king will soon starve. John decides to support him as best he can. Though he remains many leagues away, he continues to gather strength and allows his wildlings to harass their supply lines and threatens houses that are friendly or pledged support to the Boltons. The Roswells, Dustins, Serwins, Tallhearts, and Hornwoods are among those who face the wildlings' wrath. This is too much for the Boltons. As though these actions are controversial, they reflect just as badly on Lord Roose, who serves as the Warden of the North. The first to break are the Hornwoods, who threaten to abandon his cause if he does not take action, while Ramsay wishes to flay them. Hothar Umber also mirrors this sentiment, and then the Serwins and Tallhearts. All of them call for battle to put an end to the wildling threat. Soon, their fear of the Boltons is outweighed by their desire to return home. Seeing his army about to melt away, Roose must relent and give battle. He marches his army out, but decides to deal with Stannis first. Hearing of Jon's actions, the king sends a raven to him, urging him to ride out with all his strength and reinforce them, causing Jon to turn his attention to face him. Stannis braces for the Bolton attack, which comes the next morning. With time working against him, he organizes a series of ferocious attacks commanded by Ramsay and the surviving Freys. These batter the Crofters' village, trying to force Stannis into the open, but rather than rise to the bait, the king switches to the defense. He does not venture out from their relatively defensible village and simply has his knights form up shield walls and mobile shelters. These blunt the charges of the Bolton cavalry. When those fall, they rain arrows upon the village, adding further casualties. All of this makes for a difficult time for the defenders, yet they do not break, as after every arrow storm, Stannis is there, shouting encouragement and helping pull the wounded aside. When the cavalry and infantry batter their defenses, he walks through the ranks, directing the reserves where they are needed and even plugging up gaps personally. Finally, after 3 days of hard fighting, horns can be heard in the distance as Jon's army arrives. Roose curses, but shifts part of his army to deal with them. Now that the attack has slackened, Stannis calls for the army to shift the attack. Sir Godry shouts to his men and leads a counterattack. His men mount up on what few horses remain and charge the Bolton army. followed closely by masses of footmen and northern infantry. The Boltons try to form a defense, but their army takes the full brunt of this attack and begins to buckle. It doesn't help that many Northmen do not fight so hard. While the Bolton core of the army holds firm, the other houses see no reason to continue fighting this losing battle. One by one, in small groups, they begin to retreat. This turns the Boltons' advantage in numbers into an overwhelming deficit, and Stannis soon overpowers his army. Ramsay stands in the center, cursing the fleeing soldiers as cowards and cutting down any man he sees running until a lance takes him in the belly and he falls to the ground. He rides out to the right flank where Jon and his army are struggling. They do not have as many men as Stannis, and here the Northmen have less reason to leave, as they are primarily fighting wildlings. Though Jon goes on the attack, he soon finds his forces turned aside again and again. In such a situation, Robb or Ned might opt to retreat, but Jon continues to funnel in more soldiers. He does not pay attention to the casualties and keeps the Boltons occupied as Stannis strikes from the rear. At this point, it is too late, and the army is overwhelmed. Roose manages to escape with about 2,000 men, but finds Winterfell closed to him as Lady Dustin and Horsebane Umber decide they are no longer interested in following him and shut the gates before his army. Roose instead rides hard to the south, hoping to escape to the Neck and gather more support from the south. However, when he reaches Moat Cailin, he finds that it is closed off to him, as instead of his flayed men flying from the Children's Tower, the castle instead bears the sigil of House Arryn. Littlefinger sees the actions in the north and realizes his opportunity to gain influence is slipping through his fingers, and he speeds up his plan. Thankfully, the idea of supporting the Starks is popular, and even his rival Vale Lords offer their support. Now, an expedition rides out and finishes off the survivors, while Roose makes a desperate last stand. Once the Valemen ride out from the ruined citadel, it is all over, and his forces are decimated. The former Lord of Dreadfort is taken prisoner and dragged before Jon as a peace offering and show of strength, as it was Littlefinger's men who captured him. Many expect a hanging, or a beheading, as befitting for him. However, Lord Snow has something else planned. He offers him up to Melisandre, who sacrifices him in honor of the Lord of Light. Such actions would normally horrify Northerners, but in this case, their thirst for blood overpowers their own fear. Many remain silent, but mutter under their breaths at how Jon seems transfixed in the flames as Roose burns. Once the embers die out, the lords, wildlings, and valemen gather in Winterfell's great hall to discuss the current situation.
So it seems you've decided to take me up on my offer, Lord Snow, to serve as the Lord of Winterfell.
In a manner of speaking, I could not sit by and watch as your forces were destroyed. The North is bled enough, and I can serve the Night's Watch better here to represent their interests.
Well, if you're expecting thanks, I suppose victory would have been more difficult beside you, but that explains your presence. What about you, Lord Baelish?
Me, Your Grace. I simply come here as a servant seeking to provide what aid I can. I have little love for the Lannisters. It is why I kept Lord Eddar's daughter safe throughout her captivity.
Lady Sansa, but not my father. I spoke to Lord Janos. He loved to say how you had warned him about how my father would bribe him. Tell me, why would you allow my father to be betrayed and then now claim loyalty?
It was a difficult position. I could not save everyone. Lord Stark was too involved in the Game of Thrones. There was no way to properly remove him, especially since he insisted on challenging the Lannisters.
So you warned the City Watch of his plan instead of seeing it through?
I am not so foolish to think that the Gold Cloaks had any loyalty to the Lannisters. They would have followed you if you paid them well enough. So why didn't you?
It was a plan doomed for failure. We might have held the city for a time, but then the Lannisters would march in and attack it. Tywin was still alive with his army, and he marched. Everyone would have perished.
Or to keep yourself alive, so you may continue to plot.
I did this to keep Lady Sansa alive.
Then let me ask you, sister, would you have preferred to stay alive, as Lord Baelish has put out, or would you have preferred to have your father?
I would have preferred to keep my father alive.
This is madness. I committed no crime. You cannot do this to me.
Maybe. And yet, you served Ned Stark until you served Joffrey, until you now claim to serve King Stannis. The question remains, who will you serve tomorrow? And will anyone stand beside you?
He looks around, asking this question to the gathered lords. Yet, as Littlefinger desperately looks around, he finds no allies. All around him, Northerners glare hatefully at Lord Baelish. knowing he is the one who had led Ned to his death, whether directly or not. Meanwhile, the Valemen have never liked him, and many are pleased to see him go. Jan Roy stands up and approaches him. For a moment, he thinks he is saved, but then the Lord of Runestone draws his sword.
Peter Baelish is a man of the Vale. Therefore, he must be punished by one.
By all means, he's yours.
Jan and the Lord's declarant who accompanied him all allow themselves smiles as they have the guards take him away by the arms and lead him out. John does not join them, but sits back and sips his ale as the men all jeer and follow the executioner out. Soon the report of Littlefinger is dead. Stannis looks at the boy in approval, surprised at how calculating he was. When he looks at him, there is something different about him. His eyes appear more calculating. His gaze is steely, and he carries himself with a cold certainty that comes only from the weight of duty. Soon, more and more evidence will be revealed. Stannis reveals his original investigation of incest, speaking of how he worked closely with Jon Arryn to learn the truth. This is what led him directly to his death. Maester Coleman also begins to reveal his own side of the story, explaining how he was long treated both lords of the Eyrie and speaks of Littlefinger's meddling. He doesn't directly give instructions, but dismisses them or calls them whenever it is convenient for him, and he wonders whether he did this to affect their health. As they finish, the Vale Lords return and kneel before Stannis. They had sat out the war and had a nearly untouched army. Their men have no love for the Lannisters, and after seeing their recent failures, they decide that Stannis is the better king. That just leaves the North. As promised, Stannis will recognize Jon as Ned Stark's son and rightful lord.
I think not, Your Grace. The North will not bend for the South any longer. We will rule ourselves from this day until the last.
I hope that is a jest, Lord Snow. You have no right to make such declarations.
Don't I? If I recall, most of your men were provided by the North. Your campaign was to right the wrongs suffered by us.
And I did. I swept the wildlings from the wall and crushed Ramsay Bolton.
You have, and I thank you. All of that has proven you to be a steadfast ally, one we will count on during the long night.
And what makes you think you will be able to survive independence?
Because I have seen it in the flames. We've both served Rola. You've seen the flames just as much as I. Something is coming, and it will be no good if we are at each other's throats. However, I will not bow before any other king. So here is what I offer. We continue to fight together as allies. I will provide allies, give my support, and proclaim you the heir to the Iron Throne, and you will honor my brother's proclamation.
And if I refuse?
Then I will pull back my army, and you can continue this war alone. You may be able to take the Iron Throne without the North, but you will have to invade us to bring us back to the fold, and when the White Walkers come, it will destroy both our kingdoms.
This was not the deal I offered you.
I am changing the deal. Pray I don't change it again. So what is it? Will it be pride or duty?
The two of them look at each other, waiting for the other to blink. Both men continue to level hard glares, Stannis leaning closer, and yet he finds an iron will to match his own in Jon. Finally, he exhales sharply, even as the veins in his neck bulge. He publicly declares that he will consider their bid, but he will expect the North to carry its weight. On that much, Jon agrees and both sides agree. In the end, Stannis still manages to wring some concessions out of Jon. While he will acknowledge their independence, the North must still pay tribute for their food, and they will inevitably need to survive the winter. They must relinquish any claims that they have of the Riverlands, and they will not launch any offensive wars without Stannis' permission. But in the end, a treaty is signed, and a crown is handed over to Jon. When the North sees this, Robb and Ned's former bannermen cheer the young king. They proclaim Jon, the White Wolf, the new king in the North. And yet, few more cautious lords are worried about Jon. They see his bid for independence as needlessly antagonistic, and others still question whether Jon should rule, given that Sansa Stark is alive and would legally be Ned's heir. To complicate matters further, Davos Seaworth and Wyman Manderly soon present Rickon Stark from Skagos. They had rescued him, but his presence only muddies the water further, as he is both a male heir and untainted by any Lannister influence. Jon recognizes the seriousness of the situation and begins taking steps to remedy this. Many of those Northmen who ride alongside Robb Stark in the south know that Jon Snow was named his heir, but he further solidifies it by claiming the will left by his brother when Galbert Glover and Mage Marmont to return. All of this helps convince many lords to swear their allegiance to him. He also takes it a step further by questioning the legitimacy of Sansa and Rickon. For his sister, that is a simple matter. as the letters showing her Lannister sympathies are enough to leave some men questioning her worth. For Rickon, Jon points out that he was found by one of Stannis' bannermen, and they cannot discount the possibility that he is trying to place a puppet on the throne to maintain effective control of the North. These fears are enough to dissuade people from backing them and allows Jon to remain the king. He does not fully dismiss them, though. Instead, he continues to let them live in Winterfell and treat them as his family, promising that if they serve well and prove their loyalty, he will give them positions in his kingdom. Slowly, Winterfell begins to rise again as Jon orders its reconstruction and begins redistributing land and reorganizing the kingdom. One of the first orders of business is to welcome the wildlings into the north. As promised, Jon sends most of the remaining Bolton men to the Wall to serve the Night's Watch, as well as contingents from other houses whose loyalty is questionable. Reports from the Lord Daenerys show that the efforts to free Hardhome have failed, and now wildlings rush across the Wall in greater numbers than they struggle to keep them in check. But Jon sees how successful his experiment with House Then was, and begins offering wildling chiefs to marry into northern houses, providing the free folk lands to settle while allowing depopulated northern houses to rebuild. He starts with House Hornwood by marrying off Lawrence Snow to a prominent spearwife to give him additional men to protect his lands. Meanwhile, the Dreadfort is handed over to Tormund, who will serve as its new lord, and Val is given the new gift and several hundred men to ensure order there from the new arrivals. The wildlings will be allowed to settle there, but they must obey the laws of man. These moves are highly controversial for a newly made king, and many from both sides are not keen on this. The most vocal dissenters are instead sent south with Stannis' host, whether they be belligerent wildling raiders or angry Northmen. In the south, they find that much has changed over the last few months, as now the Lannisters' previously unassailable position has been drastically weakened. Tywin's death and Cersei's misrule have only further turned people against them. Now they do not even hold the capital, as Aegon VI's surprise landing is taking them off guard, driving the Lannisters out, while Mace Tyrell tries to retake the capital with his host. All of this leaves the Riverlands almost unprotected, as Stannis and his army emerge from the neck, with Moat Cailin now under Aeron control. Their first challenge comes from the twins. Even without their prisoners, the Frey's castle remains formidable, preventing Stannis from easily assaulting the castle. That is, if he didn't have the wildlings. He sends out the giants he's acquired from them, and has them rush at the gates with great oaken shields taller than most men. They ram it and send it shaking from the impact. Frey men-at-arms all gasp out and shout for more archers to focus upon them. This is exactly what the king wants, as he sends out his own wildling raiders next. Many of them had experience trying to scale the wall. The twins look like a puny thing in comparison, allowing the first wildlings to reach the top before the Freys even realize what is happening. By then, they watch in horror as vicious free folk armed with mail and good steel hack down their guards and hurry to open the gates. Soon, the rest of the army pours in, and the castle falls. The rest of the Riverlords watch this and laugh, pleased to see the arrogant Freys finally humbled. Soon, more knights of the Vale begin to arrive, and a call to arms is issued for the riverfolk, urging them to join him. Many answer this call, eager to avenge their betrayal at the Red Wedding. As Stannis marches south, he finds every village open to him as more troops hurry to join his army. The Reach sees this and is unable to truly stop him. They are trapped between a rock and a hard place, with Stannis up north, regaining strength, and the Targaryens securing their hold over the Stormlands and Crownlands in the east. Yet, even if they are to hold King's Landing, it is difficult to reassert their position due to the Sparrows running amok. Mace takes his position in the capital and prepares to defend it. He initially plans to just hold on to the city and outlast the Golden Company, but then they receive word of Dornish raiders starting to strike at the Reach marches. With most of their army focused on either the Ironborn or with him, they do not have the men to spare to defend their holdings. Many lords now urge Mace to return home and just leave a small garrison to hold it. However, this will also leave his daughter at the mercy of the Sparrows. None of that even mentions Stannis, who continues to rampage across the Riverlands. But that is when he offers Mace a lifeline. As he finishes his conquest of Harrenhal, the king writes to the Tyrells and offers an alliance. He will allow Mace to remain the Lord of Highgarden and provide aid with his army if they relinquish their claim to the Iron Throne. Such terms are harsh, but Mace is not Tywin, and he cannot hold on to his kingdom through sheer force of will. Not against 3 foes, and with his bannermen breathing down his neck. Reluctantly, Mace must yield to these terms, but manages to retain his position in the small council. The alliance of Stannis Baratheon and Mace Tyrell advances like a slow wave, putting out the fire in the Riverlands as they begin to make their push towards the coast. The Ironborn continued to ravage the coast, threatening even Old Town with the loss of the shields. And yet, Stannis' presence begins to change things. He had defeated the Iron Fleet in the past and can do so again. However, he knows Euron is no fool and prepares carefully. They gather what ships they can from the Arbor and other coastal lords. They even begin hiring cell sails and advise Jon to prepare the north to defend against the potential attack. While the White Harbor fleet can guard the Narrow Sea, Jon turns to the houses Glover and Mormont to begin constructing his fleet in the Bay of Ice. But as the longships threaten Old Town, Stannis decides to lay a trap. He rides into the city in the dead of night, secretly taking command of the ships there, while Paxter Redwyne attacks from the south, keeping Euron's attention while Stannis holds a defensive position. For a moment, it seems like they are just trying to prevent the port from falling, but as the battle commences, the Old Town fleet suddenly shifts into an attack and batters their ships while the Redwynes keep them pinned. Once the initial attack force is driven back, Stannis turns and hits Euron from the rear. Suddenly, the entire fleet is thrown into chaos, as this forces the King of the Iron Islands to beat a hasty retreat. With his forces defeated, the Reachmen are cleared of one foe and now turn their attention back to their true foes. Randall Tarley is sent to challenge the Dornish raiders, but Mace and the bulk of his forces return to the Crownlands, where Stannis decides to punish his Stormlanders. The twin attacks take Aegon Targaryen off guard as he rushes to defend against the attacks. He first sends the Golden Company and whatever allies he can find against Mace, though they are not as large as the Reachmen. The sellswords under the command of Franklin Flowers manages to launch a series of attacks against his army. These leave the Reachmen suffering worse losses, yet with close to 40,000 swords, they continue to advance. Meanwhile, Stannis also rampages in the Stormlands, burning the keeps of those lords who repeatedly swapped sides and cutting off the roads that allow the Dornish to continue supplying the army there. When Jon Connington tries to stop them, they clash along the coastal roads. At first, the infantry clash is even until the Golden Company releases their elephants. This shatters Stannis' first line, but his second contains light infantry that rains arrows and javelins upon their ranks, scattering the beasts and allowing Stannis to reform and attack again. Meanwhile, while both sides bleed each other dry, another fleet begins to arrive off the horizon, cutting through the Blackwater and towards Dragonstone, which is only lightly garrisoned and quickly falls. However, before it does, a letter manages to get sent out bearing one warning: the dragon has returned. From the horizon, the ships arrive, bearing the banners of House Targaryen. The news spreads quickly as the kings of the Seven Kingdoms catch word of this. The first is Aegon, but Stannis also gets word, and then Jon. The king in the north may have declared independence, but he still keeps a close watch on what happens in the south. While he strengthens his kingdoms, he manages to gather allies in the forms of Thoros of Myr, who hears of the tale of Jon's return and offers his service, but warns that there are those working against him in this coming war. He tells him that he's seen Daenerys return in the flames, warning that her arrival will bring nothing but trouble. Jon doesn't need to see the flames to know this to be true. The reports he receives in the coming days are enough. While Stannis and Mace seem close to achieving victory just days before, things take a dramatic turn. The first to be hit is Mace, as a force lands in Duskendale and rushes at them. It isn't a large army, consisting mainly of Unsullied and sellswords along with the Dothraki. Mace rushes to confront them, his army smashing into their sides. He hopes to overwhelm them before they can secure their toehold. Yet, unlike the Levy armies they've encountered, the Unsullied do not break. Instead, they simply raise their shields and weather the attack, while the Dothraki and sellswords launch counterattacks. Mace continues to batter them, letting his forces trickle in as he hopes to eventually overpower and overwhelm them. For a time this might work, until three shadows pass over the sea. Massive, winged, and alive with fire. Dragons. Their roars echo across the coast, and they unleash fire upon the charging Reach Knights, turning their furious offensive into the scattered retreat. When word reaches King's Landing, Aegon hurries out with whichever forces he still has and tries to stop them. However, when he and Franklin Flowers arrive, they find the battle is already over. Mace and what's left of his army slink back to the Reach. This leaves him only able to meet up with the Queen to discuss what shall happen next.
Welcome, Auntie. So glad you could finally arrive.
Watch your tongue, boy. I don't know who you are or whose son you claim to be, but I am the rightful heir to the Iron Throne.
Since when does a sister come before a son? I do not claim to be anyone's son. I know I am Rhaegar's true-born heir, and I arrived here while you were playing Liberator in Slaver's Bay. Now, why don't you return there?
Care to say that when my dragons land?
I shall, because it was my name the people proclaimed when they landed here, not yours. Tell me, does the Breaker of Trains only care when it is her name they chant?
You were meant to come here to wed me. Magister Illyrio said as much, and yet you decided to follow your own plan. Now you come here demanding I relinquish the crown that I had just won. I don't think so.
Now. There is no reason for us to become hostile. I am certain there is a deal that can be struck that will satisfy all parties.
Oh? And what deal might that be, Captain?
Well, surely it would be possible to name Aegon your heir, Your Grace.
Heir? I was here first. I already claimed the Iron Throne.
Yet she has dragons, Your Grace.
An heir, you say? I suppose there are worse ideas?
Indeed. And if we do not combine our forces, then the throne may end up in Stannis' hands.
Despite their misgivings, that is something neither Targaryen wants, and when they look at each other, understanding crosses their faces. Soon enough, both agree and combine their armies. With Mace Tyrell already pushed out of the Crownlands and posing no immediate danger, Daenerys turns her attention to the Stormlands and begins attacking the castles, forcing Stannis to disappear into the Riverwood to avoid being destroyed. The vast forests of the region allow him to wage guerrilla war against the Targaryens. Their dragons cannot reach them, but Stannis can strike their ground forces. He drops boulders and launches guerrilla strikes on them from a distance, before melting away into the trees. His wildlings and giants prove to be ideal warriors for this kind of fight, striking quickly and raiding supply trains like they have with the Night's Watch. Such tactics work well, but only if they can survive in the countryside, and that is what Jon Connington aims to stop. While Stannis knows the Stormlands well, so does the Griffin Knight, and he begins striking the castles loyal to Stannis, taking them one by one. These are the houses that provide him with soldiers and food. The king must either allow them to fall or come out in the open and leave himself exposed. At the same time, he begins trying to gather more soldiers from Dorne, tightening the noose around him. While Mace tries to provide aid, the continued raids on the southern border prove to be a constant drain on his resources and hamper this effort. This only gets worse as some of the Targaryen forces begin appearing in the Westerlands as well, striking at the houses there and backing Tyrion Lannister as ruler of Casterly Rock. There is enough chaos there that cannot immediately dismiss the possibility of an attack from the north. So instead, Stannis calls to Jon Snow, urging him to send help at once. Snow falls in thick silence over Winterfell. The courtyard glows faintly under torchlight, and soldiers line the walls as the banners of House Stark, white direwolf on gray, are raised above the battlements once more. The wind sighs like a dying man's breath. Inside the great hall, Jon stands before the war table, its surface littered with carved tokens, stags, lions, krakens, and dragons. His gloved hand moves the pieces in measured silence. He has received Stannis' letter and intends to act, but first he needs a plan, and for that he needs Sansa. She studies him, the same man, yet not the same brother. His eyes were always sad, but kind, yet now they are as cold as the wall itself. Finally, Jon gives his plan.
You will go as Lady Stark, representing the North. You'll march to Mace Tyrell and speak of an alliance. Tell him the North remembers its friends, and that we will send men to reinforce him. Once we relieve him, you will march east to aid Stannis.
And you?
I'll follow with the fleet. We'll strike at the enemy from the sea.
He doesn't tell her which sea. The fleet at White Harbor is primed and ready to go, but that is not what Jon intends to take. Instead, he rides to the Bay of Ice, where the Mormonts and Glovers finish construction of their own fleet. Wolf-prowed longships built from the forests of the north, black sails trimmed with silver thread, crews of free folk, Northmen, and sellsails. Jon stands upon their pyre, watching his fleet come to life. His eyes lift to the horizon and orders them to sail. The winds come without warning, a furious squall that tears the sky open and hurls the fleet toward the Iron Islands. Thunder cracks like the roar of gods, but that is the gift of the Lord of Light after sacrificing more unbelievers. And now they reach the grim rocks of the Iron Islands. Already the ships are ready for war, but not against the North. His spies have served him well, as he knew the ships Daenerys arrived in, where the Iron Fleet was provided by Victarion. Now they clash with the Euron's fleet. Dozens of ships lock and grind together, men screaming as fire and iron consume them. Rams thunder, waves heave, swallowing longships whole. Then, from the west, the northern fleet emerges.
Loose fire!
Flaming arrows arc through the storm, striking against hulls and masts. Wildling archers rain death from the decks, while armored Northmen leap onto the damaged ships once they get close enough. Both sides fully occupied. Neither can reach properly until they are right on top of them. Euron's fleet reels under the sudden assault. Victarion's ships falter as the storm turns against them. John's flagship drives through the wreckage, smashing through a burning longship. The scent of pitch and blood fills the air.
Board them.
Axes and grappling hooks fly. Northmen swarm over the rails, cutting down the Ironborn. The battle is short, merciless. When it ends, the sea is slick with oil and blood. Euron Greyjoy is dragged before Jon, bound in chains, his face a ruin of salt and crimson. Victarion is dead, but his soldiers find what they are looking for on the Iron Victory. Dragonbinder.
Come here for revenge, little boy king.
I came for fire.
Smoke rises over the Westerlands as the Stark and Tyrell armies sweep across the golden fields, burning the banners of the Rose and replacing them with black and crimson. Tyrion watches from the walls, a cup of wine trembling in his hand. For days they have reeled from a sudden counteroffensive from the Tyrells. They are joined by thousands of Northmen who now attack from the Golden Tooth in a two-pronged defensive. Rather than push towards Castle Rock, they instead move to the ports and like Case in hopes of securing sea routes to gather more troops. Tyrion gathered whatever men he could and tried to hold them back until reinforcements could arrive. Yet he is no leader and must rely on Daemon Lannister. The boy is a skilled warrior, fierce and courageous, but with the attacks coming from all directions, he is facing dwindling odds. Soon they find themselves in Lannisport, preparing for a siege, as beyond them they hear it before they see it. Sound like thunder from above. A dragon's cry. The sky splits as the dragon arrives, burning through the ranks of footmen preparing siege lines. Almost at once, these men drop their weapons and run. Those who stay desperately fire arrows and crossbows into the sky, as some ineffectual effort to try and halt their attacks. However, it doesn't matter as the dragons continue to circle around. Horsemen ride off, abandoning their infantry while camp followers scatter into the four winds. Captains and lords try to rally their men-at-arms into something resembling a defense, but as their lines begin to form, they are scattered by dragonflame. In the distance, Jon watches this from his flagship, his fleet approaching the coast. Beside him, Euron stands, tied to the mast as the waves crash below. In front of him, a group of men places the dragonbinder at his feet and presses the tip into his mouth.
Blow it.
You don't know what it costs.
You're right. I don't. But I know who will pay it.
He presses it against him, but when Euron protests, one man punches him in the stomach until he opens his mouth and they ram it into his lips. The horn rises. Its sound is a wound in the world, a deep, shuddering noise that splits the sea and makes every man clutch his head. Flames burst from the horn's mouth, devouring Euron alive. Above, the clouds twist. Wings break the darkness. Viserion descends in a storm of light and fury, his golden scales reflecting the fire below. The dragon lands upon the cliffs, roaring in rage. Jon steps forward unarmed. The wind lashes his cloak as he meets the dragon's gaze. Viserion roars again, fire exploding across the sky. The heat sears the air, but then the beast lowers his head, steam rising from his nostrils. Jon lays his hand upon the dragon's snout. The fire flickers and dies. The Lord of Light's whisper echoes in his mind. Now you burn with my flame. From Drogon's back, Daenerys tries to call Viserys back, wondering what happened. She has no idea what is happening and believes that the dragon is simply attacking the fleet. But when no flames come out, she watches as he descends for someone to ride, and then the dragon unleashes fire upon the battlefield. Daenerys' Unsullied scatter as molten flame cuts through their lines. Horses rear and scream, their armor melting. The world burns white and gold. Daenerys rides forward, her face pale with disbelief. Drogon circles above her, roaring in challenge to dive towards him, but Jon turns his dragon aside. He has what he is looking for, and leads Drogon away, but sends the ships to pick up his sister and whatever men they can, while others retreat back across the Golden Tooth, while the Targaryens are in disarray. Soon, messages are sent, ordering all their forces to retreat north, abandoning Stannis to his fate. It was a difficult decision, but Jon decided the chance to obtain a dragon was far more valuable than any alliance with the false Azor Ahai. He has received word of Dragonbinder and the civil war from Ironborn defectors, the Brotherhood, and from staring at the flames. Meanwhile, Sansa made perfect bait to lure the Targaryen army out. When the news reaches the Stormlands, it comes too late. Stannis' army, surrounded in the Rainwood, is cut down. His banners fall one by one, his men scattered into the marshes. Jon Connington rides among the ruins, finding only corpses. In the distance, the sea glows faintly, northern ships cutting through the smoke, their sails black against the dawn. Jon Snow watches the coast from his deck. The air is thick with the smell of salt and death.
You left him to die.
He served his purpose.
And what purpose is that?
To clear the board.
You sound more like that red witch every day.
She was right about one thing. The Lord of Light doesn't choose kings. He chooses weapons. And I mean to be his last.
Soon the few survivors from Stannis' army trickle to his fleet. Among them is Jon Royce, who struggles to make sense of everything that's just happened. But he is given a choice, to continue serving Jon or to face the wrath of the Targaryens alone. Melisandre is also there, offering her services to Jon. Far away, the wall groans under a new kind of wind. Inside its ancient heart, the old spells unravel, the last remnants of the first men's wards carved into the ice and blood. A dull blue light pulses within the cracks, then spreads like veins across the frozen face of the wall. The earth trembles. Atop the battlements, the Night's Watchmen stare in silence as a low rumble builds beneath their feet. Then, with the sound of 1,000 bells breaking, a vast section of the wall collapses. Beyond the breach, the darkness stirs. Shapes move through the snow, slow at first, then faster. An army of the dead marches south. The storm over the wall glows faintly blue, the wind shrieking through the ruins of the ancient ice. Jon stands amidst the wreckage. The charms of the wall are broken, shattered like glass by a power older than memory. Far beyond, the dead pour through, an endless tide of pale eyes and clattering armor.
Hold the line. For the living.
Despite the cold, he does not shiver and feels warmth spreading through his body from the Lord of Light. He sees this as a blessing to continue and urges his men forward. Steel clashes, arrows hiss. Wildlings and Northmen fight shoulder to shoulder atop the splintered ramparts, blades blackened with fire and dragonglass provided from Skagos and Dragonstone. Every strike kills wights, but 10 more take their place. Giants of ice stride among them. Viserion wheels overhead, golden flames scorching the horizon. Every blast of his fire tears holes in the endless ranks, but the frost reclaims it. At the base of the wall, Melisandre stands in the snow, hands raised toward the collapsing heavens. Her red eyes blaze like twin embers. She ensures the cold is not entirely dominant, and from time to time the storm recoils, but the cold only deepens, snuffing her fire like a candle. Tormund roars for them to retreat as their efforts to plug up the gaps begin to pull back to the castle. Here, they try to create secondary defenses and hold for several days. Yet, the dead do not leave them alone. For every yard they yield, the world grows darker. The blue light spreads, swallowing flame and shadow alike. The battle soon becomes untenable for them, and they must retreat further and further inland. Words are sent out to the people to run away and to make their way to the neck, while Jon moves towards Winterfell. By the time they reach Winterfell, the north burns. Villages lie in ruin. The snow glows faintly with the reflection of blue fire. Frost fire of the White Walkers march. The living flee before them, caravans of ragged men, women, and children moving south. Within Winterfell's hall, Jon stands over a map of the realm, marked with soot and blood. Around him, lords and captains argue in fearful tones.
They'll reach us by nightfall. And what then, King Snow? What magic do you have left?
Even your dragon has not turned the tide.
Jon doesn't answer. His face is drawn, his eyes hollow. Melisandre stands at his side, whispering in low Valyrian. Jon Royce leans over the table, his armor dented and grim. Though he does not wish to admit it, the North cannot stand on its own. And yet, they have no choice, as the dead soon reach them. The storm falls upon them like the hand of God. Frost sweeps over the battlement. Men scream as ice crawls up their armor. Jon leads the charge. Viserion dives overhead, his golden flame colliding with the blue of the Night King's army. He dives low to attack White Walkers, killing several of those creatures with fire and Longclaw. But others replace them each time they fall, and the dead surge forward. Giants of bone and ice crush through the walls. Arrows of dragonglass fly, but barely stop the hordes of the dead. Jon feels it before he sees it. The cold grip in his chest. The whispers of ancient malice. The Night King rides through the storm, blue eyes fixed on him. Every heartbeat feels like the echo of a drum, distant and final. He meets the creature's gaze and charges. Viserion swoops low, flames trailing in his wake. The Night King raises his head. An icicle of power slams into Jon's side. He falls and nearly tumbles from his saddle. Viserion shrieks in pain, a similar wound in his side. He curses and rides back as Melisandre calls for retreat. It is a struggle to get Viserion under control, but he manages to burn a path for the survivors to escape. Yet it matters little as he soon collapses on a nearby ridge, and Melisandre meets him. He already knows what she has to say. They cannot afford to continue fighting this war like this. Not alone, they will need allies. The dragon lands beside him, curling its massive body around his fallen form, though even his gestures are pained and struggle to get comfortable. By dawn, Winterfell is gone. The survivors flee through the neck. Columns of smoke rise from the ruins behind them. Jon, half conscious from his wounds, rides upon Viserion's back. Below, his armies stumble southward. Wildlings, Northmen, and Vale soldiers alike, but led by Jon Royce. They are accompanied by waves upon waves of small folk.
If the walls fall, there is no stopping them. The dead will march until there is no land left to take.
Then we find another way.
There is only one natural choke point left.
I agree. We must hold the line there as long as possible. However, I do not believe that is enough. We need allies. The Northmen will not be able to hold without aid.
The Targaryens.
If we run further south, we lead the dead to the living. There will be no end.
There is one place we can make a stand. The twins.
The banners of House Stark and the direwolf of the north fly over the ruined twins. The castles are half collapsed from the old war, but the bridges still stand. Behind them lies the river, black and frozen. Jon's men fortify what remains of the gatehouses, piling pitch and oil in vast trenches. Viserion circles overhead, his breath forming golden arcs in this gray sky. Yet, it is not enough, so Jon flies south, all the way to King's Landing. He makes no secret of his arrival and approaches the dragon pit, where Drogon and the others move to confront him. Yet when they see his injuries, they hesitate. With the North abandoning the war, Stannis soon falls, and this leaves King's Landing open to them. Now they have consolidated their hold over the city.
Your wall is broken. Your north is gone.
Not yet. Then why shouldn't we ride out and finish the job? Because we are the only thing stopping worse things from arriving. You think we come here only because we want to? No, there is something drawing us here. The White Walkers. You speak of myths and legends. Do I? Look at the injuries on this dragon's body and ask yourself, what could cause this? You think wildlings and Ironborn caused this damage?
Daenerys makes herself look, but her gaze is pained as she looks over at the dragon. She sees the puncture marks left from the spear, the white scales stained white, and the labored breathing. Slowly, she asks what Jon wishes for them to do. Days later, Daenerys and her army arrives. Their approach is a storm of crimson and black, her unsullied march through the snow, her dragons roaring from above. Drogon and Rhaegal descend beside Viserion, the ground shaking beneath them. There, the others are planning what might come next, and Melisandre steps forward.
Your Grace, there is only one way to end this. Fire alone will not destroy the Night King. He is of the old world. He was born of blood magic, and so must die by it. A sacrifice. One born of king's blood and shadow. And who would you sacrifice?
I have a prisoner. He brought death to these shores. Let him serve a better purpose.
They gather upon the bridge of the twins at dusk, just as death approaches. Although efforts to slow them down with choke points have failed, the White Walkers now come rushing forward. The Unsullied and the Westerosi rush to meet them, yet even their famed discipline cannot hold them, as the Whites rip through the spears and charge at them. While they manage to hold, the dead do not stop coming. Dragons descend from the sky and burn their numbers, weaving through ice spears, while Aegon commands the sellswords to try and flank them. He personally commands a contingent of elephants that trample the dead and seem to momentarily turn the tide. However, they are soon overwhelmed and driven back as the Whites swarm the great beasts and begin to drag them off their feet. Below, Jon Royce and Jon Connington try desperately to rally their men along with the remains of the Northmen. The air trembles with power. Melisandre stands at the river's edge, chanting in the tongue of Old Valyrian. Before him stands Euron, whose body is set alight upon a fire. The sight of him sends the dead redoubling their efforts to rush towards him. The river seems to freeze over as they approach. Euron screams as the fire takes him, his body twisting into shadow and smoke. The sky darkens, the clouds turning crimson, but as the dead approach, these flames begin to flicker. Jon and Viserion ride down and begin to burn through them, keeping the dead back. Daenerys follows while Aegon rallies his cavalry and strikes them from the back. Slowly, the water below begins to boil. Jon raises his hands, feeling the pulse of the earth beneath his feet. The Lord of Light's voice fills his mind. He drives his sword into Euron and watches as his blood drips onto the river. The world explodes. A wall of flame bursts outward, racing through the neck in a single blinding wave. Marshes turn to glass. The earth itself splits, the sea roaring in to swallow the ruins. The Night King's army is caught in the surge. The fire consumes them, flesh, bone, and ice alike, until nothing remains but steam and silence. The Night King sees all of this, his eyes widening in surprise as the entire world turns to fire. When the light fades, only ash and water remain between north and south. The neck is gone, severed from the realm by fire. Jon collapses, the strength leaving him. Viserion roars above, wings beating against the smoke. But with this, the final division between north and south is made. This leaves the north practically an island, separated only by a wasteland, and helps secure its independence. While they are battered and devastated, many are keen to return home and begin rebuilding as best they can. While the Targaryens are keen on pushing Jon for his role, their men are not keen on returning to war after what they witnessed and are happy to leave the north alone. So Jon returns home to lead an independent kingdom. That's our theory. Westeros is a land filled with exciting stories and opportunities, and we love exploring them. If you'd like to join us on this journey across Westeros and beyond, then please like, share, and subscribe to our channel.